Forget to record. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to get started here in one quick minute. All right, John, let's kick this off.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you for joining AECadvisors.ai and our interactive and exciting webinar on how to use artificial intelligence to improve your AEC proposals. My name is Sham Raj. I'm a principal at AEC Advisors. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. Also, Frank and I will be available after this presentation if you do have any questions. It is now my pleasure to introduce Frank Lazaro, one of the leaders in the industry on especially how to use AI specifically for AEC proposals. He authored one of the first books in the industry on how to use AI for artificial intelligence, the AEC Marketer's Guide to Artificial Intelligence. It's now my pleasure to introduce my good friend and partner, Frank Lazaro.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Hey, so real quick, one change on the questions. Make sure you put them in the Q&A and not the chat. I don't think the chat's enabled on the webinar. So any questions, just click on the Q&A and we can dive in from there. And we'll try to answer them as we go. So kicking this thing off, so when we think about artificial intelligence, at least from an AEC professional's perspective, you know, the biggest challenge that we have is not understanding the value of what AI can do for us, not understanding that we should be paying attention to it, not any of those things, but really kind of like the how. And so this presentation is really going to be focused on the how. We're not going to spend hardly any time in trying to convince you that AI is something that you need to be paying attention to. It's more along the lines of let's figure out how we actually use it today, and you know, be able to come off of this webinar today and be able to use some of the things that we're talking about throughout this presentation. So quick on the agenda, we're going to jump right back into, you know, how to use AI. I'm going to start off with prompt engineering. We're going to focus on prompt priming. And then we're going to go through some demonstrations around content creation and everything from an RFP through developing proposal win themes, copy generation, rewriting copy. And then we'll kind of wrap up the hour with any questions from there. So from a foundational perspective, I have just two slides that I want to cover just so that we understand why we're talking about generative AI and not any other kind of AI when it comes to our industry. So in our context, when we think about this from an AEC perspective, the artificial part is basically means the computer, and then the intelligent part really means data without a decision from a human being. So it's really kind of using a computer and then using a data set to kind of create outputs and help us become more efficient. So a great example I like to use is, so how does this work? And the reality is that all generative AI kind of works exactly the same way. So we have a question, we have an idea, the AI does something, there's an output, there's a human refinement, and then we use it. So a use case to here is that we want to talk about creating a LinkedIn article. AI helps us produce content. Someone proofreads it, edits it, and then someone posts it on LinkedIn. So when you're thinking about everything that we're going over today, it's basically the same framework. You have an idea, a question, a thought. AI then is going to really kind of help you kind of start developing a first draft of that content. And then we're going to go into proofing, reading, and then posting. So from an AEC perspective, there's a question in there about AEC. That stands for Architectural Engineering and Construction. All right. So let's jump in real quick to the tools that we're going to talk about today. So when we talk about generative AI, really we're just talking about 4 tools today. And 2 of the tools are exactly the same because one's a plus version versus a non-plus version. But when I reference generative AI, I'm essentially talking about either ChatGPT, I'm talking about Claude, I'm talking about Copilot, the Microsoft Copilot, or the Copilot Plus. You could also feed into this Jasper, Write AI, Character AI, any of those other tools out there, and they all generally work the same exact way. When I refer to it, I'm only really referring to these four in particular, because they're the ones that seem to be gravitating towards the top in terms of the amount of usage that's out there. So now that we kind of have a framework of what AI is in terms of what we do from our perspective, from the AEC industry perspective, let's kind of talk about how we're going to use it or how you can use it. So when we think about this, we have to start with prompt engineering. And the reason we start with prompt engineering is basically it's the way that we tell the generative AI on what we want it to do and then getting the results that we want out of it. And it's key. You kind of hear a lot about prompt engineering and how you ask it questions. And what you're going to find is that the vast majority of people don't ask the right kinds of questions, or they're not asking detailed enough questions to get the results that they want. And so a great example of this is that you ask it a question and you've probably gotten a result that seemed very generic. It could apply to any architecture firm. It could apply to any engineering firm. It's mainly because you haven't given it enough information. And what we're going to do through the next several slides is really cover off on how to do it more effectively so that you can actually get better results when you type in something within the prompt. So I want to start off with poor instructions equal poor results. And I tend to use this slide and this graphic for a purpose. It's hard to read, and mainly because it's, if you have poor instructions, it's going to basically produce poor results. I love to use the example of an intern. When you think of if you had an intern this summer sitting in your firm and you asked that intern to go write a project sheet, and you gave that intern no other information, just to go write the project sheet, what kind of project sheet do you think that you would get back from that intern? But if you told that same intern, I need you to write a project sheet, but here's every project sheet that we've ever written before. This is the project that I need you to focus on. Here's the project manager that you need to go interview. This is the style guide. Here's our branding guidelines, and gave that intern all that context and information. What kind of project sheet do you think that you would get back? You'd probably get something back that was about 70, 80% usable. And then all you have to do is spend another 20% or so actually fixing it. AI is exactly the same way. You are never going to get 100% usable content out of AI. Plain and simple. You're going to get maybe 70%, 80% accurate. And then what you need to do is then put the human refinement on it and actually produce it. So having the right mindset when you go into creating content with AI is really around the fact is that you're never going to get something perfect. You're always going to have something that's about 70 to 80% correct. And then from there, the human refinement and the human clarification and the context and all the other stuff that's applied to it will get you to 100%. And the reason we say that is that when you think about that for a moment, that if you can actually get to your first draft of a proposal 30% faster than you could have if you'd written it by hand, how much time did you save? How many more proposals could you focus on? How many more things could you do that are more revenue generating? So you're spending less time by using AI to create that content you need. So it's all about creating those efficiencies. So what is prompt engineering? So again, it's how you tell the AI what you want, but it's going to require you to be very clear and concise in what you're asking for. Again, effective prompt is going to have better results. So the basics of writing a prompt, and you've probably seen these, if you're on LinkedIn at all, or you're on any social media, they always have these generative AI things on the best way to write a prompt. The best way, honestly, to write it is actually write it if you were talking to a human being, and you need to kind of provide very specific details. So it's a very smart individual, but it's not very smart when it comes to the exact topic that you're talking about. You can't assume or infer that it knows what you're referring to. So you have to kind of get into it from the perspective of being able to provide as many details and be as specific as you possibly can. You also want to kind of break up your bigger tasks, so you can ask it to review a whole proposal, or an RFP, but what you really want to do is ask, when you upload the RFP, you want to kind of break it up and say, I want to focus on this section first, then this section, then this section. Instead of saying summarize everything, you want to kind of break it up when you're within the same chat window. And then you also want to ask the same prompt multiple ways. So words matter. So the way you ask the questions and how you frame your questions will produce various results. So if you ask one question, you're not getting the result that you want, ask the same question a different way. And then more importantly, what you really want to do is you want to ask the AI follow-up questions. So you have to remember that when it comes to AI, it's interactive. It's actually a two-way street. And we're going to go into this a little bit later, but you asking it questions is one way. You asking the AI to ask you questions is a completely different way. And both of those are very effective in getting the results that you want out of your prompts. So again, a good prompt is going to be clear, concise, and specific. You want to give it a persona. You want to tell it to act like something. I need you to act like a proposal manager. I need you to act like an accountant. I need you to act like my client. So you have to give it a persona. You also have to give it information. The more information that you give it, the better the results. If you've ever put something in AI and got something out that was very generic, that could have applied to any firm, mainly it's because you didn't give it enough context and examples of what you're trying to do. And then you also have to get into making sure that you're asking for it to complete a very specific task. I need you to do X. I am producing a LinkedIn article. I'm writing a cover letter. I'm doing a team profile. I'm doing something. The more context that you can give it, the better the AI is going to perform overall. If you give it a wide berth and you don't give it the context and you don't give it guardrails, it doesn't know what to do, so it's going to produce something that's very generic sounding and sound like something that you don't want to use. So you want to get as specific as possible and concise in the information that you're asking. So an example here, when we think about a good prompt, I start off with, you are an expert social media content creator. Help me develop 3 LinkedIn articles about the topic of writing and developing marketing content for the AEC industry and how AI will drive this. So right off the bat within this, there's in the first 2 sentences, I've given it a ton of context and guardrails. I told it, 1, it's a social media content creator. 2, I told it that we're writing articles for LinkedIn. Now, words matter. It's not a post. A LinkedIn post is short, very abbreviated. A LinkedIn article is going to be more longer form. So again, it's going to look at the words that you're using. So right off the bat, all the context that I've given it is I told it needs to act like a social media content creator. I told it that we're creating LinkedIn articles, and then I gave it the topic. And then I tell it should be in a table format with a title, hashtags, a summary of the topic, a mid-journey prompt to create an image, etc. So what you see here, it's a multi-layered prompt. So a good prompt is not a single sentence. A good prompt is actually more likely a paragraph or more longer. So when you're thinking about your prompts and you're thinking about how you're writing your prompts, you have to be thinking of it in a very structured format to sit there and say, I'm starting off with creating context, more context, and then actually going into creating or asking it to do something. It will actually produce much better results. Now, you can elevate this prompt by actually getting it to ask you questions or getting it to dive or have something that you've already previously written on this topic and then adding it, and it's going to give it further context. So when you think about writing your prompts, it's never like you're Google searching. It's not about writing a single sentence and then asking it to do a very complex task. It is actually going through and giving it very specific context and details that you are going to actually produce a much better result. So if your prompts look like the top, generate a LinkedIn post about AI, that's not a good prompt. There's no context. It's not asking you to, you're not giving it any guardrails. It's going to produce a very generic sounding response. It will produce something. It just won't produce anything that is actually very usable. If you go back and look at the original prompt here, yes, this is what we want you to do. We want you to do all these different things, and all of these things matter at the end of the day, when we really want to kind of focus on getting them to kind of create good content, good usable content. And I think that is one of those things to where most of us have failed when we've looked at AI and we say that we've tried it, it doesn't really do what we want it to do. It's all about the fact that we're not prompting it the way that we want to prompt it. So when you think about your prompt formula, there's really 5 things that you need to consider when you're writing this. Think about your role. Persona. Again, you're a marketer, you're a project manager, you're an architect, you are something. And then I always follow it up with I am, so that 1, it knows all the context. It knows its role, it knows my role. And then we go into the task or the result. What do we want it to do? I need to produce 5 emails. I need it to produce LinkedIn content. I need it to write a cover letter for my proposal. I need to evaluate a proposal, an RFP. So just understand the task and results. And then you got to think about the goal. What do you want to do? What's the purpose of the output? Is always a great example to give the AI so that it knows, well, how or why it's creating that content. And then context. You got to think about who, the what, the why, and the where, right? I'm shooting for a particular audience. I'm targeting a procurement officer at a local the Department of Transportation. I'm working on a water resources project. I'm going after a private business or private client. So providing that context is really going to be helpful to getting the AI to really kind of understand what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. And then any constraints, are the limitations on what you're trying to create. It needs to be more than 200 words or less than 200 words or 500 characters. We have all gotten to the point to where we have been in a situation where we're responding to a proposal where there are requirements. It can't be more than 5 pages. It can't be more than 10 pages. But you already may have content that is longer than that. How do you make it shorter and actually fit within the framework that you're wanting? So it helps you repurpose the content. You may have content that's too short and you want it longer. You can get AI to kind of help rewrite that and make it longer. Again, it's all about efficiency. So understand the prompt formula is really going to set you up for success later when you're actually kind of writing and creating your prompts. So roles can be anything. You can make up any kind of role. It could be a marketer, it could be a copywriter, it could be social media. It could be any of your technical roles. It could be a survey, it could be your principal engineer, it could be an architect. You can get the AI to act in any manner that you want. It can even act as a person if you want. So if you want to mimic a celebrity, select a celebrity. You basically have to give it a role. And then, more likely than not, and maybe it's a proposal writer or the proposal manager, it's the project manager. So when you're writing your prompt, make sure that you're focusing on assigning a role to the AI so that it knows how it's supposed to act. Right. And we're going to go into a little bit, but I love the concept of you are, I am. You are this and I am that. And then that way is you're starting off your prompt with the initial context of I am focused solely just on responding as if I was this project manager. So when you think about the next part of your prompt is around creating a task. What do you want it to do? Write an article, develop a proposal win themes, write LinkedIn posts. Do you want it to analyze, summarize, outline? So you have to think about what is your goal? What do you want it to produce? And you really have to tell it and explain it in a way that you really want to do that. So the other way you got to think about it is also you think about format. You don't want it to be so open-ended that it's just producing 10 paragraphs of copy when you don't need 10 paragraphs of copy. I need a list. It has to be in a table format. I need to be several paragraphs, less than 500 words, more than 500 words. I'm creating content for a presentation is a great way to start a prompt, but most presentations are bullets. So you have to maybe specify that you want your content in bullet format instead of paragraph format. So format is also very important because it's going to get the content closer to the output that you want. And then it's going to be easier for you to edit it later. So when you think about that, there's a lot of things that you can do when it comes to that formatting piece. So again, go back to the you are, I am. I always start with you are, I am. You are an expert social media content creator. I am a project manager. Interchange that. You are an expert proposal manager, content writer, I don't know, PR person, principal engineer, architect. Give it your something. And use adjectives to kind of explain it. Is this a person an expert or are they a junior level? Are they, so you want to kind of provide that additional context. If you're a junior level person, call it out. Say, I'm a junior level project manager, and it's going to help you provide that context. So when you think about this you are, I am, think about this from the perspective of you have to give it enough context so that it understands those particular roles. The next thing you want to do is you want to go into the ask. So go back to the task part. I need you to rewrite this copy, and you're pasting the copy. If you attached it, say, I need you to rewrite this copy that's in the attached. So again, we start off with you are, I am. We go into what we want it to do. So the ask. So again, we're going at it from a layered perspective. From there, what we want to do then is kind of give it more details. When I write things, and I personally write things, I use very Spartan language. I don't use a lot of adjectives. I don't use flowery language. So when I want the AI to actually do something for me or write something for me, I tell it I want Spartan language. I want you to keep it professional, but I also want it to be friendly. I don't. So a great example here, when you're talking about more details, say that you're taking a one paragraph write-up from one of your technical people on your staff. And they tend to write very technical, very dry, very mechanical. You can then go in here and say, I need you to rewrite this so that it's not as technical. And so when you think about that additional details perspective, you can take something from, say, a project manager or a technical resource and then rewrite it in a way that is actually easier language to read, something that's a little bit more broad-based in terms of that more than non-technical and technical people can understand. So understand when you're adding more details in this particular part of your prompt, it's really important to kind of layer that out. So once you've got your prompt kind of structure, then you really want to continue to add additional context. What you want to do is you want to provide the AI and basically put it in a box. You want it to operate with so many constraints that it actually produces something for you that is actually a lot more usable. And the way that you do that is that you continue to provide more and more constraints. In this instance, we talk about training the AI. One of the game-changing things that you can do when it comes to writing your prompts is you start writing your prompt the way you normally would. You are, I am, I need you to do this. Keep the language Spartan, but professional, but friendly. And then right at the end of that prompt, before you hit enter, you type in, before you start, ask me a series of questions about my company, my services, my products, my customers, anything else that you would need to better complete my request. What this is actually doing at this point is basically taking the AI and putting it in a box that is just your company. And what it's going to do, it's going to then come and ask you a series of questions about your request, about you, about your company, about your products, about whatever. And then you answer those questions. So it's a conversation back and forth. You answer those questions. And once you answer those questions, it has all the context it needs. You can upload your company profile, you can upload your resume, you can upload your bio, you can upload your product sheets, your service sheets, or whatever you want, and give it all the context in the world. And then what it's going to do is it's going to use that information to actually create the request that you need. So it's fascinating when you think about that for a second, that you could basically turn around and get the AI to ask you questions versus you asking it questions. So an example of that is let's go over here to the AI real quick and jump in here, ChatGPT, and we're going to basically start a prompt, and we're going to write some copy for my business, ask me 10 questions about my customers, etc. And what you're going to find is that it's then going to write you a series of questions that you answer. Now, the cool part is that you can answer these questions once, save them, and then basically paste it back in anytime you're going back in here. So I'm happy to help. Here's some questions to get me to better understand your business and customers. Describe your business in a few sentences, the main products and services you offer. What are your primary customers and target audience? What are the main challenges your customers face when you're with your products and service? Now, think about this for a quick second. If you answered these questions wholly and fully, do you think that the AI would produce something that is generic sound? Absolutely not. What it would produce is it would produce content that is based off your answers. So when you think about how to get the AI to not sound generic and to actually produce content the way that you want, you have to do these game-changing prompt techniques that you go back and sit there and say, ask me questions before you begin. So if I go through and answer these 10 questions and then get it to ask, to create content, it's going to produce this. So there's a question in here, what version am I using? I'm using the 4.0 or the 4 Omega version. Everything that I'm teaching here can actually be used in any version, whether it's the free version or the paid version. I'm on the paid version in this particular demo, but you could use the 3.5, you could use the 4.0, etc. So right here, you want the AI to stop giving you crappy, generic sounding content. Get it to ask you questions about you, your company, your products and services first, and then get it to start generating the content. So have to use these techniques. You have to use them and you're going to produce much better content. So there's a question, can the information that the AI is asked saved, or will it remember the answers given? It will remember the answers given within the one chat window. If you start a new chat window, you're going to have to either answer the questions again, or what I typically do is I save it out into a Google Doc or a Word document. And then when I go back to it, I said, hey, I've already answered these questions. Use these answers to formulate the response. So it's just a shortcut. The way to kind of do that is just save your answers, and then if you start a new chat, you can always paste them back in. So just keep that in mind. So elevate your prompts. Get it to ask you questions. It's the most important thing that you could probably do. But other things you can do. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. You need to give it a personality or persona. You could also ask it to write in a particular tone. So if you're trying to be humorous for social media, you're trying to be professional, you want to mimic you want to do something, give it that persona. Another thing to do to elevate your prompts is that you can go in and say, mimic my writing style. I don't think people understand this. You can actually give it something that you've already written, and it will actually write the new content in that exact same style, tone, cadence, etc. So if you want to completely elevate how you do this, not only are you getting it to ask you questions and you're answering those questions, but you're also giving it something that you've already written and then telling it to mimic your writing style. And then don't forget to be multi-layered when you're writing your prompts, right? You have to go and say context, 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 ask me questions, then create content. Don't treat it like Google where you're just trying to search, write me something. It doesn't operate that way. Well, it does, but it doesn't do a very good job. So if you have been getting generic sounding content and it's not doing what you want, you have to deploy some of these techniques and you're going to produce much better content going forward. So the prompt is the prompt. It doesn't matter whether or not you're using ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, Jasper, or whatever. What we're kind of showing here and what we're teaching here is the same exact thing. It is all about how you structure the prompt. You can write the prompt and I will challenge you. Open up ChatGPT and open up Claude and actually ask it the same prompt and compare the results. And what you're going to find is that each language model or GPT is going to produce essentially something very similar, but maybe a different result. So I would suggest using multiple ones if you need to. I tend to use ChatGPT. I have been using a little bit of Copilot. It doesn't produce as thorough a response as ChatGPT does. But when we think about when you're writing the prompt, it doesn't matter. Whatever technique that we have here is the same exact prompts that you can use in any of these generative tools. So just keep that in mind. I tend to use ChatGPT mainly simply because it is kind of the premier tool when it comes to producing content. Claude has been getting much better. I've seen people use Jasper to some good results. I just tend to use ChatGPT. But everything all these techniques here can absolutely be applied to any of the generative AI tools that are out there. So I want to dive a little bit deeper in the prompt priming. So we touched on it a little bit when we talked about getting the GPT to ask you questions. And there's more to it. There's more to getting the AI to produce better sounding content that is actually sounding more like what you would produce or what your clients would produce. So what is prompt priming? We touched on this a little bit. It's about providing content and context before the AI gives you a response, right? It's all about doing those things. Now, prompt priming could be giving it a document that you've already done, you've written before. It could be pasting in content that you've used before. Context could be getting it to ask you questions. There's so many different things that you could do from a prompt priming perspective that allows you to kind of get much better sounding content. So why do we do that? Well, I think at the end of the day, we do it because we want better content, right? At the end of the day, we don't want generic sounding. I don't want it to write something about architects and engineers that could apply to any architecture and engineering firm in the country. I want it to be for my company, for how it sounds for me. So when we do it basically to guide the AI to generate a more relevant response. That's all we're trying it to do. And you're not going to run into copyright issues, and you're not going to run into issues with plagiarism if you're starting with content that you've already created. So if you have content that you've already have and you're using that as a priming aspect, it's not producing content from whole cloth. It's actually producing content off of content you already created. So you're less likely to run into any issues when it comes to, say, copyright or plagiarism, because it's building off of what you've done versus actually just creating something out of thin air. So another reason why you want to do this is, again, it's just going to produce something that is way more relevant to you, and it's going to be way more useful. So you think about this from the perspective of time savings. If it takes you 10 hours to write a proposal, how long does it take you to get to the first draft? If you can get to the first draft in 50% of the time that it normally takes you, how much time can you save on the overall production of that proposal? It's a game changer when you think about it. Think about your social media. I can create a month's worth of social media topics in roughly 5 minutes. How much time did that save me? I don't have to ideate on the ideas. I don't have to do all these other things. There's a lot of things that you can do with this all around if you prompt prime it correctly. So when I think about content ideas for my social media, I've given it everything that I've ever written. It has copies of my books. I give it copies of things that I've written before. It knows my writing style. I give it previous social media posts that I've done before, and then I ask it to generate some new topics for me, and then we go into generating content. But at the end, the content that it's producing for me, because I have primed it and I've given it all this context, it sounds more like me. Yes, I still have to edit it, and I still have to review it, and I still have to fact check it. I still have to do all of those things. But it's about 70 to 80% where I need it to be. And so I can create a whole month's worth of social media posts in a couple hours on a Sunday morning while I'm drinking coffee while everyone in the house is still sleeping. So for me, it's a time saver. So you think about your business and you think about what you're doing for your firm and your agency. What are you doing to save time? AI is going to be able to do that. How do you get there faster without creating generic sounding content? You have to do the prompt priming, and you have to train the AI. So how does it work? So we touched on this a little briefly, but let's give you a different example. So I go to write the prompt, and the you are, I am statements in there. You are a proposal manager. I'm a project manager. That kind of sits above this prompt. But the below part is what we want to focus on. I need to respond to the RFP section title, and I give it the title of the RFP that we're talking about. In this instance, I've attached the RFP, so it knows what it's referencing. Use this copy as reference to match my writing style. Here's an example, some recent copy I used before to respond to a similar RFP, and I put it in here. So you think about that for a second. It's not trying to create content out of nothing. I've given it writing samples. I've given it similar responses. I've given it the RFP section that we're responding to. I've given it all these things and all the context that it needs, and it's going to use that information, and it's going to mimic my writing style, and it's actually going to produce something that is way more usable at the end of the day. So another way to do this is, if you respond to a bunch of proposals that are very similar in nature, and you have previous proposals, because I know for a fact that we've all done this. We've all gone back to a previous proposal. We've grabbed the section, we've grabbed the cover letter, we've done something and basically tried to rewrite it for the new proposal. AI can basically take every proposal that you have, you can upload 10 of them and say, these are 10 similar proposal responses that I've done before. I'm responding to another proposal and I need to rewrite this section. It's going to look at everything that you've written and essentially use that content, mimic your writing style, and actually produce several paragraphs of copy for you that's going to match that. So remember, when it comes to prompt priming and prompt training, all of this is around providing it with context. So you want to avoid the plagiarism, you want to avoid the copyright issues, use your own content when you're creating content, but you have to be able to give this. You cannot assume that the AI understands what you're talking about. You have to be able to give it that context and that details. So we touched on this a little bit, right? So ask me the 10 questions is another great example of how to do that. So do that and then save those responses and use it over and over again. And what you're going to find is that the AI is going to produce really, really, really good responses that probably only need 20, 15% of your time to kind of edit and get it where you need it to be. Another way to do this, if you are, and this is specific to ChatGPT, by the way, but within the settings feature, there is a customized ChatGPT function, and you could give it custom instructions. So if you want to be able to save some of these things about your firm, about a variety of things, you can add it here. The only problem with the custom instructions part within ChatGPT is you are limited to about 1,500 characters. So you can't put your whole company profile in here because you're not going to be able to fit it. It just won't accept it. But you can do basic things around this. So this is basically a snapshot, a screenshot of my custom instructions for ChatGPT. So I don't have anything underneath that I wanted to know about me in particular, but I do want it to respond in a particular way. So if you kind of read what I have in here, your responses should use fewer adjectives and be Spartan. Your tone should be professional yet friendly. Do not use the following words: dwell, safeguard, robust, demystify, in this digital world, realm, or any similar words when writing. I don't like those words. I don't speak like that. That's not how I talk. I'm much more blunt when I speak. So when I do that, I can give it some basic instructions. So you could put some of your writing examples, like your writing style, how I've written it here, but just know there are limitations to this. One, character count is your biggest challenge. The other thing too is that if you're writing content for multiple clients, so you say if you're an agency or something, this is going to apply to every single chat. So you have to keep in mind that manually priming each chat is probably a better way to go. You can provide a heck of a lot more detail, a lot more context than you can here, but you can do some basic things within the custom instructions, which will kind of help with kind of answering or creating content. So custom instructions, pros and cons. You don't have to retrain every chat, but you are limited in the information that you can give it. It does create consistency from chat to chat. The downsides, and we touched on this, it does apply to every chat. So if you are using it for multiple clients, multiple reasons, it does apply to everything. You can turn it on and off, but you know, again, that's kind of a pain. You are limited in the amount of information that you can feed it at any given time. Again, only about 1,500 characters. So let's jump into some of the questions real quick. Is this slide from the paid version or the free version? David, I think that I'm on the paid version. I haven't seen the free version on whether or not it's there. But if you are in the free version, the easiest way to check that is within the chat. Click on your name, click on settings, and then click on personalization. If you see custom instructions here, that will tell you exactly whether or not it's available in the free or the paid version. It is available on the paid version because I see it. I don't have the free version, but you can just check it here. Again, to see that, click on your name, click on settings, personalization, and then click on custom instructions. So we answered that one live. Can you save the conversation within save version and go back to it? Yes, you can. It'll Jamie, yeah, when you save this, it'll save it in the chat. So it'll basically keep it within this chat window. So anytime you go back to any one of your chats over here, it will basically, it'll retain that information. All right, so Nicholas just said that he just checked the send on the free version. It's not there. So personalization looks like it's only on the paid version right now. All right, so let's get into creating content. So we're going to do a live demo of how to actually analyze an RFP. So I'm using ChatGPT. I am using the paid version for those that are asking. I randomly pulled an RFP off of the DeKalb County, Georgia website. That's probably the second or third largest county in the state of Georgia. We're going to upload it and then basically analyze it. And I prepped it already. So the prompt is, you are an expert proposal writer. I'm a project manager. I need to respond to this attached RFP. It's for a multi-year land use easement acquisition services contract with a 2-year renewal. Can you create me an outline and summary of the RFP in a table format that details key information, important dates, and other relevant information? So to save time, I'm not going to get it to ask me questions, but what it's doing right now is it's essentially reading the RFP and now taking that information from the RFP and putting it into a table format per my instructions. So for the proposal people on the phone, how useful is this just to be able to create a one-page summary of this in roughly 30 some odd seconds? So, because we all know we've all walked into a proposal kickoff meeting and everyone in the meeting has read the proposal, because that happens every single time. So what did this tell me right off the bat? Without ever opening this document, I know for a fact I have the RFP number. I know who the procurement agent is. It's Willie Moon. I know what his contact information is. There are mandatory meetings. There are non-mandatory meetings. And then there's a submission deadline. How cool is that? How cool is it the fact that I was able just to kind of go in and get this information? Now, I asked it for other information. It told me the proposal format is a max 20 single-sided pages or 10 double-sided pages printed on 8.5 by 11 with a minimum font size of 11. There's some requirements, right? So there's a cost proposal, there's a cover sheet, there's references, there's compliance forms, there's some other mandatory stuff in there. There's evaluation criteria. It tells me how they're scoring it. I haven't even read this proposal, and I know more about what's going on with this proposal than most people do when they walk into a proposal kickoff meeting. Scope of work, duration, it's an initial 3 terms with the 2-year renewal options. The funding is both federal, state, and local funds. Adherence to GDOT and federal guidelines required. Attachments, there's a scope of work, proposal form, affidavit. So there's some information in there. And then it gave me a quick summary of what this is. So when you think about this for perspective, when you think about what you do on a day-to-day basis, to be able to take an RFP, upload it to ChatGPT, prompt it in a way that it's actually pretty useful, to then be able to walk into a proposal kickoff meeting with everything in here, this is important. So here's another cool thing. Now export this to a CSV file. So now export this table to a CSV file. So then I could turn around. I don't want to have to retype all this because that's kind of a pain. I can just ask it to export this table to a CSV file. It's going to go through, analyze the prompt, and essentially give me a file to download. And then I could download it, open it up in Excel. I don't have to retype anything. I can just go in and go in formatting. So ChatGPT is analyzing. I don't know what it's doing. So we'll let it do that. So this is a great example of how you can analyze an RFP. So essentially all I did was grab an RFP. So how many RFPs come across your desk? How many RFPs could you go through and essentially create a summary of that document? So here's the CSV file, by the way. I can just basically just click it, download it, open it up in Excel, and it has everything that's actually in the table that I've already created. A lot of people don't know that. They didn't know that they can actually, like, what do most of us have been doing? We've probably come in here and we've copied this and then pasted it in, and then we had to muck around with the formatting and a variety of other stuff, and that's kind of a pain. It's actually kind of a waste. Just get it to export the file. I need you to export this into a file that I can use. So just keep that in mind. It's a lot more powerful than you think it is. You have to prompt it the right way. we can ask it a series of questions, right? So I can go in here, and then, so if we wanted to kind of build off of some of this, right? We go back over here, I can come in and say, okay, based on this summary and bullet points, write me several win themes and strategies to position my firm to win this business. Ask me questions if you need to help respond to this. So then I can come in and then come in follow-up prompt, and it's going to basically come in and give me win themes and strategies in terms of how I should be approaching and tackling answering this proposal. Right? So extensive experience, there's compliance, there's obviously experienced team, methodology, local partnerships, team qualifications. I don't know, it's going to keep going, right? So right now it's already given me, what, 15 different things that I need to do. It's giving me questions. If I can go in and answer these questions now, what technology and systems does my firm use for project and tracking and reporting? I go back, I can continually just have a conversation with this thing over and over again to get to the point to where I actually have a proposal response or a submittal that is going to get me to my first draft within hours, not days. So, I mean, this simple prompt gave me win theme strategies and then questions to better tailor the response. And I got to go through and answer these questions. So just know that the AI is way more powerful than most people are anticipating it to be and what it can do. So just know that from an RFP perspective, if you were not using an AI to kind of help you just summarize and analyze, you are losing out, and you could be having a very big time saving. So there's some other prompts, right? You can get it to ask questions, you can summarize, you can, based on the attached RFP, can you do an outline for an internal kickoff meeting? So there's so many other follow-up questions that you can do with it when it comes to analyzing that RFP. Proposal win themes, we just kind of touched on it. I actually kind of layered it in with another prompt, but you can actually get it to say, okay, how do I position my business to win this? If you use the ask me questions about my firm, the response is going to be tailored towards you and your firm and not some generic response. You can also start new. Hey, listen, you're an architect who designs large commercial office buildings and I'm a potential client. Write me several win themes and strategies to position you to win my business. So now you're getting it to act like an architect and you're the client. And you do this prompt mainly to kind of do it it's an ideator. You use it for ideation. How would an architect, if they were an architect and I was the client, how would they respond to it? And it's amazing on how you can get it to kind of act in these different roles, to use it to kind of generate ideas on how you would want to respond. So just know that it's not necessarily about producing content. It's actually getting it to get you to think about creating ideas, generating ideas, doing different things in multiple different ways. So here's the output. As an architect, it specializes in large commercial buildings, and it gave me a bunch of generic answers. Now, if you went in and kind of gave it some information about your firm, the answers would actually be less generic. But just know that, again, you're using it from an ideation perspective. Now I can think about how would I answer the quality control question? How would I answer the sustainability or innovative design from my firm perspective? So again, when you think about this, it's not necessarily about generating content. It is also about generating ideas. Proposal copy, right? So again, ideation, you manage a water sewer system for a local city government. I wouldn't be that generic. I would say City of Atlanta, City of Portland, City of San Antonio. You can go in and actually specify an exact city. I'm a consultant trying to win your business. What are the important factors? Again, using it from an ideation perspective, you can do that. From a copyright perspective, you could get it to kind of rewrite copy for you. So if you already have a cover letter and you like your cover letter, but you want it to be a little bit unique for this client, give it the copy and say, I need you to rewrite this. I need you to rewrite this with this additional details. It's not this client, it's that client. Right. So when you think about it, it's, I was helping someone recently. We were rewriting a cover letter and we were changing it from the port of Vancouver to the port of Washington. Well, it's the same cover letter and we just need to kind of swap things out and then add a little bit more details, some unique facts about that particular port that's different. and it rewrote the same exact cover letter with the additional information. So you think about this, this is your editor. This is the person that can help you write things, do things a lot faster, where you don't have to manually do it yourself. So rewrite copy. So this is, I love this example. This is, you're a copywriter, I'm a project manager for an AEC firm. Rewrite this project sheet, bring in other industry facts and details about the demolition of the Sheraton Hotel complex design build. Well, I asked the technical person to give me a project sheet, and this is literally what they gave. They gave me one paragraph, and I know we've all been there. We've all asked the technical people to do writing, and they basically give you one paragraph. Well, one paragraph is not a project sheet. One paragraph is one paragraph. So how do I take this and actually turn it into something usable? Well, when you prompt it, it came back and now gave me 4 paragraphs of copy that is actually way more usable. Now, it's taken what was already written and basically is reformatted it, added additional details because it is searching the web. It went out and pulled some information from the local news. It gave me a bunch of stuff. Is this 100% usable right at AI? No, because I still have to fact check it. I got to make sure that the information was it a $9 million project? Let me go check the stats. Let me go. So you have to just fact check it, but it's a lot easier to edit and fact check than it is to kind of create from scratch. So I took one paragraph, turned it into 4 paragraphs. So just remember, you could be using AI to kind of help you rewrite existing copy. And I would highly recommend you do that because it avoids a lot of issues around generic content, copyright issues, plagiarism issues, because it's based off of what you've written and not creating something out of thin air. So copy generation, again, goes back. You can create, water consultant, regarding a partner. It's going to kind of give you the same thing. This is generic sounding, by the way. You want to give it way more context. What city, about your company, get me to ask questions, and then generate this, and the copy is going to be in a much better spot. So with that, we got about 8 minutes left before we wrap this up. Want to cover off the fact that, again, you have to be thinking about your prompts. You have to be thinking about, this is not Google. You have to be thinking, my prompts, when you look at the way I prompt things and the way I create prompts, my prompts tend to be paragraphs, not sentences, right? So when I think about, I'll give you one quick example on the social media stuff, right? Here is my prompt for social media. And if your prompts aren't this way, then you're probably not doing it the right way. My prompt is basically 2 paragraphs long. You're an expert social media content creator. I'm a best-selling author and an expert in AI content creation. I'm giving it all this context about me. Your goal, this is what I need you to do. Create me 20 topics. I click that. It updates the memory. In a table, it's now going to give me 20 things to write about now. I don't have to ideate about what I want to write about. Not only that, not only is it giving me the topic, but it's giving me the headline. It's giving me a 1-sentence summary. It's also giving me hashtags. So now all I have to do is go write. So now I have 20 topics. Essentially what I have here, once this is done writing, is I have essentially 1 month worth of social media topics. 1 post per day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks gives me 1 month. I have everything that I want to write about. It's just right there. So when you think about creating ideas and you think about ideation and you think about your prompts should not be 1 or 2 sentences long. Your prompts should be as detailed as they possibly can. And so when you think about the instructions that I gave it, it's completely on spot when it comes to the topics that I want to talk about. It's completely kind of where the direction of things that I want to talk about. And now I have all the ideas that I need to start writing content. You could do this for everything. So when you think about your prompts, you have to be thinking about it in a way that is actually way more detailed than you're probably thinking that it needs to be. So with that, let's go back to the QA real quick to see if we hadn't answered any of the questions. So, all right. So AEC, we answered that live. Done. Information that the AI asked to be saved or remember. Yeah, David, I think we answered that. It will save it within the same chat. So if you always go back to the same chat, it'll always look at everything that it's above it. So keep that in mind. If you start a new chat, you're going to have to go back and give it that information. So there's two ways to do that. One, you can get it to ask you questions again, and then you can answer the questions again. Or the first time you do it, just save it out to a Word document or a Google document and just keep it at the ready. When you go to write it, just say, I've already answered these questions, use this to create new content. And then it just kind of helps expedite. It helps expedite getting the information that you're in there. Let me see here. The free version. We answered that one live. Thanks, Nicholas. This is all right. All right. For uploaded and create proposal. So there's a question about from photos be uploaded. So I would say that the generative AI tools are getting better with photos. I don't necessarily think that it's something that you would want to use. If you're looking for something that is not clip art, but that's something that's a little bit more tailored, that is kind of like a stock photo or something like that, AI does a great job. If you're wanting something that's slightly usable, you're going to struggle with getting stuff out of AI. Doesn't mean that it's not going to get there. Leaps and bounds. I mean, if you kind of look at where AI was last year in terms of generating photos, you know, it was terrible. It was, you know, the images were all over the place. It wasn't really very weird. People have like 17 fingers and all this other stuff. It has gotten much better, and it'll continue to get better. Just right now, photos aren't there. There's a question: have we used this for FS330s? Yes, I've used AI not only for FS330s, but I was recently helping somebody with an FS33, and then helping a firm here locally, an environmental firm locally. We were focused on EPA Start 4, Start 7 proposals, which were very similar governmental formats. So there are definite ways to kind of use AI to kind of use this for those particular formats. So, so with that, we have about 3 minutes left. Make sure that there is anything that we're missing here. I know there was a question early on. Yes, there will be a follow-up email with the link to the presentation and a link to view the recording of this. So you feel free. And so with that, if you guys have any questions that are following up, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to Sham or myself. And I think that we'd be more than happy to kind of talk about anything around that. Oh, another question came in. Have you tried using Copilot Studio to create your own AI assistant? Yeah, so by the way, I think the Copilot Studio is going away, if I'm not mistaken. I think that they are they're re-envisioning Copilot. I have created my GPTs within my ChatGPT that basically does the same exact thing. And so when I create, by the way, so when I create social media content, I create it through here. And then underneath here, what you'll find is that when I built my own GPT, everything that I've ever written, all the documents, all my blog posts, every interview, all my books, my bios, everything kind of stays here, so that when I go to create my own social media, it's always here, even from the instruction standpoint. When I think about this for a second here, right? The instructions, all the instructions stay, all of this stays. So when I think about creating repeatable processes with this, creating a MyGPT is probably the best way to go, simply because I don't have to retrain it every time. I just come back here and create a social media generator. So the folks that work for agencies and work with other clients, you could basically create a GPT for every single client. So I have, not only do I have one for AEC, but I have a financial services one. I also have an FS330 form builder. So there's a variety of ones that you could kind of create that helps you do a variety of different things. So with that, we're at the top of the hour. Again, we appreciate your attendance. And again, if you have any questions, there will be a follow-up email. Do not hesitate to reach out to Sham and I. And again, we appreciate everyone's attendance and look forward to an email from us in the next couple of days with all of the links. Again, well, thanks everyone and have a great afternoon.